Our first question from Dylan Johnson. If aero bars go against the spirit of gravel?
Oh, God. Really?
It's his question. It's his question.
It was nice to change position, let your wrists rest a little bit. So in original gravel, they were called comfort sticks.
Do you drink beer daily?
Yeah. Yep, I love beer. Sometimes it's non-alcoholic. Not every day.
Ако нешто е повеќе од јасно од сите овие епизоди на нашиот подкаст, зборот перформанс може да има најразлични дефиниции и сваќања. Ама едно е заедничко за сите, дека никој никогаш не направил ништо сам. И како знак на поддршка, проверете ги линковите во описот што е доле под видеото, во делот пријатели на подкастот.
Right on, man.
The overall winner of the quadruple crown of gravel, Peter Stetina. It's an honor to have you on our podcast. How are you?
Good, man. I'm really glad you got my last name. Usually everyone says Stetina, but maybe it is, Macedonia that they say it the right way. It is Stetina. So.
No,
thanks.
I've just heard it somewhere. We immediately have some fan questions, so I'm gonna start with those, and then we'll move on to my questions. Our first question from Dylan Johnson, which is a buddy of yours, and he asks if aero bars go against the spirit of gravel.
Oh, God. Really?
It's his question. It's his question.
Comfort sticks do not. In original gravel days, because these races were so long and you were solo for so much time, it was nice to change position, let your wrists rest a little bit. So in original gravel, they were called comfort sticks. But once you start thinking about aero bars, I feel like we are losing the part a bit, and again, it gets so political nowadays. But
that's fine.
Gravel was always about the masses, right? Like it's about everybody doing this adventure, and anyone can compete. And when you start getting to the point where people are having the $5,000, 3D printed handlebars that they do for like World Tour time trial, then I think we lose the point a bit. So it's gray. But the spirit of gravel is very gray. It's not black or white. So
yeah. Okay. Well, that was for Dylan. We have a question from David, local cyclist. He asks, "Do you drink beer daily?"
Yeah. Yep. I love beer. Sometimes it's non-alcoholic. Not every day. And sometimes it's a good non-alcoholic beer. We have a really nice, that science in non-alcoholic is coming up really strong in the US right now. But I mean, especially in off season right now, I have a drink with dinner almost every day, whether it's a glass of wine or a margarita or a good beer.
We have Coach Tripunovsky. He asks, what is your most important weapon when you're finishing a race? Do you have a secret weapon?
I mean, no. If you finish the race correctly, you've done almost everything already. For me, I don't have a sprint, right? I don't have a weapon as a sprint. So I need to use the race to wear down my competitors throughout the day. Multiple hours of small moves that put them continually wasting more energy.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And thanks for all the fans out there. We mentioned the Belgian waffle rides, but your resume is so much longer and more impressive. And to name just a few, you're a 3-time national champion. You're a 8-time Grand Tour in your 10-year World Tour career. You played an integral part in Riders Hesjedal's, I'm probably not butchering his name, his Giro title. In just a couple of years, you were one of the most accomplished gravel racers ever. And the list just goes on. However,
that's very kind of you.
However, am I right in feeling that for you personally, career-wise, you feel most proud of the time when you returned to racing just months after the horrific crash you had at the Tour of Basque Country?
Yeah, race victories are nice, but I mean, there's a lot of races in the world, and people, that's a story that can always be told and rewritten. And when you have an injury that defines your life like that, that is something that really shows who you are and that you grow so much from. It changes you as a person. So, in terms of my accomplishments, it's like, that, and coming back and racing the tour 1 year later and, continuing and saving my career. And also this move to gravel, being one of the first guys to do it and to show that you can be a professional cyclist in a different way. And that opened up a door for so many other riders to choose this path. So, those are two of like the most, I think the crash is the most personal, my selfish accomplishment. And then the biggest contribution that I have given to cycling was being that guy that left the world tour for gravel, because it changed a lot of people's mindset around professional.
About the crash, I don't want to take you back too much into that horrible time. Aside from the physical aspects of it and just the impossible way in how you recovered so quickly, what kind of an impact did it, and if any, mentally after that?
Yeah, when something like that happens and you have a bad accident, where the other side of that crash is. When you're a young racer, you don't think about the consequences of a bad accident. When you know what the recovery and what a real injury is to you, like, you don't take the same risks after that. You can, and sometimes I do, but not all the time. Like, you have to think, okay, this moment is really worth it. Like, if it's 100 kilometers to go, relax, don't worry about it, and just maybe you have to use a little bit more energy later. But in the final, if you have to fight for the position before a climb or something like this, then you would take the risk. But it was just about evaluating it. And then you also realize, the people who are in your life that matter, and your support network, and how you value certain relationships. So you definitely rethink a lot of things with something like that happens to you.
Thank you for that. I really like this term that I've actually been seeing for the first time with you, and I don't know if I'm gonna pronounce that one right. Privateer. Yep. Privateer. I can intuit what it means, and in your kind of switch from your classical pro, being a member of like world tour teams, you're still a pro in a different way. Can you elaborate a bit more on that term, privateer?
Yeah, a privateer it's funny. It was the start of me and some guys with a video project trying to think of how to describe what I changed to when I moved to gravel, and this term came up. But what a privateer usually means is it's self-funded. You are your own boss. You're a team of one, so to speak, or a mercenary. And so, within cycling, it's, you have your normal team structure with your team sponsors, and everything is done for you, and you're told what to ride, you're given your jerseys, you're given all your plane tickets, and you just focus on being a professional bike rider. Basically, the privateer model is you are your own boss, and you are that team of one, and you're doing it all on your own budget. It's your own business, more than just pro racing. It's a lot more work, but also it's a lot more gratifying in because they're your direct relationships, right? And beyond that, like, what a privateer is it was meant as an effort to bring the whole community together, because most of us, except for the road world tour riders, the professional road racers, really are privateers. Like, we are going to the races, and I'm the same as you, where I'm spending my own money for registration and flights and hotels, and I'm trying to make a living with cycling, just like, you have this podcast, right? And, maybe you start looking for sponsors, and to try to make a little bit of a living after that, and work your own way and your own passion within cycling, right? And so you are a privateer following your path. I'm a privateer following my path. And it was more of a call to everybody to embrace that.
That means that I assume it's more rewarding, because you develop these direct relationships with your sponsors, with your partners, or whoever kind of joins you on this path. But it's also a bit more, I don't know, uncertain, or how should I say, like in World Tour, you're just like an employee. There's other people worrying about those things. But here, you kind of actively need to constantly work on those relationships, and you don't know whether they're going to be there or not, like in 6 months or 12 months. So it's more rewarding, but is it also a bit more uncertain?
It's more rewarding. I would also say it's more certain because you are your own boss. It's more rewarding, and like you say, that these relationships are personal connections and you have a direct relationship with a company instead of these other team bosses who can decide, oh, you know, maybe I want a sprinter and not a climber, and they just trade you away, right? Like in the world tour, your job is never secure, ever. And with this, you know, in the normal industry, you can have these relationships and make these, you know, contract deals or whatever that have like a longer vision to. So it's I think it is more secure. You know, there's other ways to promote a bicycle besides winning a race. Winning a race is a nice way to show the bicycle is fast, but you know, sometimes it's a cool video, sometimes it's a group ride with a bunch of people, whatever that is, right? Like you can always think of how to provide value for a partner besides winning a race. But it is a lot more work. Like it's everything else. Like I would say riding the bicycle and training this is half my job. I spend just as much time on the phone, dealing with media, social media, projects with companies and everything else.
Yeah, I understand. And you're right. And it's actually very nice to see that you can kind of make a living and still call yourself a pro in the cycling world and not have to win races. I mean, we have so many examples nowadays. Well, even with Dylan Johnson and like the vegan cyclist and all these guys that make great content with their bikes, basically, they're still enjoying the cycling part of it as well. So I think I understand a bit more now.
Yeah, and that's, you know, everyone thinks, like, what qualifies as a pro? Is it your racing license? Is it your UCI card? Because in the eyes of the UCI, I am retired because they don't view gravel as a real sport still, right? Even though I am very successful. You know, I would argue that I think being a professional cyclist is you make your living with a bicycle.
Correct.
This is my line, because if you need a second job to support racing a bicycle, then maybe you're not a full professional.
Passionate hobby.
Right? Yeah. So, you know, the fact that I can still make a living only doing bikes, that I figure that is, for me, that's the line of professional. That is my profession. I realize in normal sports history, pro means the top level of competition, right? Whether it's pro basketball or whatever this is. I guess you could say I do, you know, pro sport for gravel racing, but I don't know. It's always, everyone has different opinions. It's like politics.
Yeah, well, no, you do. Because it was strange to me as well, as I was kind of trying to find out more about you, aside from the things that are more recent. I did come up to this term quite a lot, former pro. And I'm like, well, he's not former. I mean, he's dominating a whole discipline of cycling. There's nothing former about that. And he's a complete pro. So, which is why I kind of wanted to touch on this. And I think, we both understand it similarly. I don't want to bother you with training questions too much. I mean, there's a ton of materials there, how endurance cyclists and all that, how we train. But there is one thing that is, at least you're part of a rare breed of the whole World Tour pro turned gravel racer type of thing. It is rather unique in recent years, an actual World Tour rider turning pro.
Yes.
And so if I may ask one question there, how and if did your training changed once you decided to go all in on gravel?
You know, it's a complicated answer. I mean, I came to gravel because I cared more about the adventure of the off-road circuit and the lifestyle and hanging out with everybody. So, I was tired of the world tour life of only training rides. And the job in gravel is these adventures all together and these group starts. So, with that in mind, I stopped training as strictly, I guess, not as hard. I stopped training as strictly, and I only, I would do more adventure rides and more fun events. I started doing more mountain bike rides because, the off-road technical capabilities is just as important as fitness and power. But, you still need a lot of fitness. So, I still do a lot of training with the normal road pro interval workouts that I know worked really well for me. So I still do intervals sometimes, but not as often. And it is more about fitting in the technical stuff, going for adventure rides, because that is part of the spirit of gravel, I guess, is, just a really cool adventure. And also, like, being a privateer, as I was saying, like, I'm so busy with so many other media requests and other things that I don't always, like, training is not the only important thing. And I can't put everything around training. Like, sometimes it's like, oh, I'd really like to do 5 hours, but I have to, this is a more normal and relatable life. Like, I have to pick up my kids from their mom or their nanny, and then I have to, take this call. So I only have time for an hour and a half today, and that's life. Yeah. So
I see.
That's kind of what it's like now. It's more normal, I guess.
Well, even normal is relative. Going over your 2022 racing calendar, you won the Belgian Waffle Series. What was the Lifetime Grand Prix? 5th place. Yep. I don't want to sound ignorant or disrespectful, but kind of found it hard to find more information about the actual race details, like event by event. So my question is, why 5th? Like, you won the Belgian Waffle.
Yeah.
You rode the Lifetime Grand Prix. It's just me not knowing the specifics of the racing. What led to your 5th place there?
Yeah, it is because gravel, there's so many different events, and there's so many single day races too. Like, if it's unless you live in the US right now, where gravel is really pushing, is the most popular, it's hard to understand how, Steamboat or SBT, as you see, or Mid-South, I mean, these races are just as important as a Belgian waffle ride or something too. Like, there's a lot of one-day races that are super famous here, and they are really, really important. When I started promoting gravel and trying to not be the champion, but promote and champion the effort of gravel for everybody, I didn't want to put another race above certain races. So, like, of course, Unbound is super important, right? But I have to show the same respect to Belgian Waffle Ride, for example. And so you have these 2 big series in the US, and then a bunch of other one-day races everywhere. And some are really big and important, and some are more local and smaller. And I said I would do the Lifetime Series. It's the most prestigious one. It's the biggest one, the most prize money. Belgian Waffle Ride, I would say, gets the second amount of attention, but they're very, very different. And I didn't want to only focus on the Lifetime Series. I felt it was important to showcase all the races. And so there were riders that only focused on the Lifetime Series because that was the premier series.
I see. Okay.
I was a little bit too busy to fully only focus on those, and it did not allow me to prepare perfectly. In addition, I had a lot of personal life things this year with the birth of my kids, and it was complicated and a lot of other stuff. I caught COVID at a very bad time for one of the races, and so it was all just circumstances, and everybody has excuses. And, the best I could do was fit in that series. And the way that the Belgian Waffle timing worked, I was on a higher level for those, which is great. And and the Lifetime Series is also really interesting in that Belgian Waffle Ride is all gravel. The Lifetime Series is half mountain bike, half gravel. So the mountain bikers had a more advantage in that series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that. It was just for kind of my own clarification. But you did mention And I mean, it's an obvious fact. Gravel is just becoming more and more big and huge in the United States. But another thing that stood out from your racing calendar was an 8-day race in Colombia. How cool was that? How was the experience there? And was it any different than what you're used to in the US?
That is the Transcordilleras. Yeah, that was in February. It was 8 days. And you cross the 3 mountain ranges that become the Andes of Colombia and South America. And it's a bikepacking race. So you have to carry all your clothes on your bike.
Oh, it's bikepacking.
You finish the day. But it's like a stage race. So you have an official stage every day, a start and a finish. You do not sleep in the forest, for example, for 2 hours and keep riding. So you race. Basically, I would call it a self-supported gravel stage race. So you have to carry all your own things, but then when you finish the stage, you go check into a hotel, you go to a local restaurant, but you also have to wash your own bike. You have to do all the things to be ready for the next day. So there's a lot of logistics, a lot of complications, but my gosh, that was the coolest way to ever experience a country. I mean, you get so deep into Colombia and you meet the people in all these towns that are just so kind. There's no better way to visit a place. And then that race itself was so hard. I mean, that was the most hours and the most climbing I've ever done on 1 week. Way more than the hardest week of the Giro or the Tour, for sure. I mean, it was maybe the of course, the competitors in the Tour are much stronger, but I mean, just the course was so extreme. I mean, one day we climbed for 4 hours straight up one hill.
Just nonstop, 4 hours.
On gravel, on bumpy, like off-road gravel from, like 200 meters sea level to like 4,000 meters. This kind of things. It's crazy up there. So, it was such a cool experience, and I can't recommend it enough. It was really fun.
Did you see that same, how the gravel communities are, that energy, that camaraderie? Was it the same there as well?
Yes, and more, because it is a small group. I mean, you need a very select group that are going to commit to 8 days across Colombia. So it was only like, 30 people. And Lawrence and Dan, like, there was good riders, Thomas Decker, but some ex-pros. Yeah, it was, you do these one-day events, and then you do hang out and chat with everybody, and it's such a fun. When you are living across a country with the same people for 8 days, then you really become, connected on a deeper level.
Generally, I believe pro road cyclists, in most cases, they are pretty meticulous with their training. As you mentioned earlier, in your World Tour days, trainings are very specific. There's not much freedom to do just adventure rides and things like that. They don't easily decide to just go about on 10, 15, 20-hour rides to chase some time on top of the fact that you've just ridden 15 hours. And I'm talking about fastest known times segments. But recently, you do actually go after some of these fastest known times. You've tackled some, you've achieved some. What is so attractive to you about that world? And are you going to continue chasing more and more of these?
Yeah, for sure. I want to do more. The FKT, or the fastest known time, it's super popular in running. Running, it's kind of a standard thing, especially in like ultra marathon. But in cycling, it wasn't so popular. And then, during COVID, basically, when all the racing stopped, a bunch of us pros here in the U.S. kind of thought of this as a way to still race against each other, and so it is about taking on this epic course that is normally a super famous ride, and to do the best time you can. And then instead of the competition being against other riders, it's more of a time trial, but on this super iconic route where you get to choose the day, right? So you start thinking about the wind direction and the time of the day and the temperature and where you're going to fill your bottles in the creek or whatever it is, right? And all these other parts of all the other logistics that go into like a super big day. And I think it's here to stay, because I think there's something that is motivating about just putting in like a really awesome ride and doing it the best you can. And I think that's it's kind of like a record, you know. It stands, you know, every year, you know, next year that the Belgian waffle ride happens, there's another champion, right? It changes every year. But with an FKT or a record, all-time record on an all-time course, you know, that can last for 1 week, or that can last for 20 years.
Yeah,
you don't know.
Yeah.
So it's very similar to like the hour record on the track right now, you know, with the time trial bikes. Even more special because you're on some of the most beautiful, hardest courses in the world. So that's been a fun project, and I don't want it, now that racing is full speed again, now that COVID is, you know, less of a threat, I don't want it to be forgotten. So next year I am going to start doing some more FKTs again, because I think it's worth making them stay.
Wow, even more so. Well, I know you mentioned once you moved all in on gravel, your training has become not that specific, not that precise, but still, this is not your normal adventure ride. I mean, you have to accommodate something about your training to just go after like a fastest known time that might be a 15-hour time trial. How does it change your, I don't know, training program or your cycles? It still requires some preparation. You don't just decide tomorrow to go.
100%. Oh, you could. But, yeah, it takes a lot of preparation in all the things, the logistics, the studying the course, studying the terrain, choosing the equipment you need, and then knowing that you will have fitness for however long this is. I mean, you know, one of them that I did was 5 hours, and one of them I did was 11 and a half hours. So, you know, you definitely need to train for those, to think of it as your best way. But, you know, it's not only about the fastest known time. I mean, you could go out once you see that, oh, the Kokopelli FKT is a super famous one-day ride. And, I mean, there's people that do the Kokopelli or the White Rim, these famous FKTs, they want to do it in 1 day for their best time, you know?
Yeah, that's
because
true.
That is just the adventure in itself. It's not just for the elite pros. I mean, it's super badass to be able to achieve this period no matter who you are. So
yeah, that's true. That's true.
The idea.
Let's move away from cycling. I think it's enough. It's enough of cycling in your world, in your life.
Yeah.
Tell me about craft beers and the whole home brewing. And you yourself mentioned it's like your second greatest passion after cycling. Tell me about that, the backstory. How does one get into that world? And I believe you're still doing it yourself, or maybe you now have some bigger productions going on.
I'm just a fan now. Now I just drink it, but I know a lot about brewing. Yeah, I love craft beer. It's a big passion of mine. Where I live in Northern California is some of the most famous breweries. It's a big part of our culture and our community. It's where I live now. It's like wine. You know, you think about the different flavor profiles and the styles and the tasting notes, and so it's super fun and it's super regional. You know, when you go to a different town, you know, you don't really want the same beer that you find in New York than that you want in California, you know? So it's very regional. I like to travel and experience what breweries are doing everywhere I go. It's where you get the flavor and it's where you get the feel of a community when you visit it, I think, is at the local brewery. You know, yeah, I did start brewing as a kid when I was, you know, college age, and it was super fun. It was just fun to make your own beer, and the process of, you know, the whole process from start to finish. It was a little bit of science, a little bit like baking, but I wasn't very good, but it was fun. You just learn from there. And then I slowly I met a few brewers. I consider them good friends now. And so for a charity one year, a really well-known brewer said, like, you know, let's make a beer together for the charity, which was it started out as Pete's Secret Stash, and that was a really, really great beer. I mean, it's still one of my favorites, not even because it was with my face. It was just it was crafted. You know, we sat down together, and it was this professional brewer who was like, you know, he's won gold medals in beer competitions, and he, you know, he said, okay, Pete, like, what do you like? You know, what is your style? You know, and so I got to name other beers that I liked and talk about flavor profiles. And then he created a beer from that. We sold it, and the proceeds went to the charity that I like to promote. So that was a really fun project, and it just kind of continued to move from there. But unfortunately, I'm not doing that beer anymore because they're so busy. Maybe they'll bring it back someday. I got to push on them again. So thank you for the reminder. But now I just like to go and sample the beers and come in and talk about them. And yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. I just like hearing when people are so passionate about something and what are the details of their passion, why and how come it happened. So one extra question there. When you did brew your own beer, was it just for your own tasting? Did you give it out to friends? Did you sell it?
Yeah. No, I never sold it. It was, you know, if you do a home brew, it's usually 5 gallons.
Okay, small batch.
And so it makes like 40 to 50 beers.
Okay.
And so, you know, I would drink some, and if it was good enough to give as a gift, you know, it makes a really nice Christmas present because, like, hey, I made this from scratch, you know, or you share with friends for sure, and just, yeah, you give it out. Never was good enough to sell. I don't think anyone would want to buy my beer though. It wasn't that good.
You did mention your children and your life significantly changing because of it, obviously, and I didn't want to interrupt you then, but I do plan on asking, how is fatherhood going?
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work. You realize, yeah, what you thought was a bad night of sleep before is now a good night of sleep. You know, it's been a hard process. My son, my kids are 4 months old now, so they were born in July, and my son is still in the hospital, but he's going to be coming home very soon. They finally found like the final problem that needed some surgery, so now he's just recovering from that, and he'll come home probably next week from this recording. And so it's been a different trajectory from normal birth. You know, we had twins, so our daughter was very normal and healthy, and our son had some issues to deal with first. So we kind of have like 2 lives. You know, we have home with our daughter and just doing the normal parent things like the bottle feeding and the waking up at night. But then, you know, the other half of our life is at the hospital, meeting with doctors and all of these things, and you know, heart rate monitors and all that crap. So it's been a weird experience, but I mean, those kids are so fun. You know, I'm very happy it happened. So
I truly wish for your son to finally come home with you.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. I didn't realize that it was still going. I did follow a bit, and you guys were happy that you're kind of done with some of the complications. But yeah, I truly wish for everything to settle down and you start enjoying the lack of sleep from having 2 kids with their own separate circadian rhythms. I'm sure it's impacting your cycling, and it's even unfair to ask of you how is it impacting. But if you could just share some information of how are you dealing with it now that it's so much more challenging just to put in the hours, because for your level of racing, I can only assume the amount of volume that just needs to be done weekly. And How are you? I mean, I'm sure you're getting a lot of help. You have good relationships with people around you, but it's still, I'm guessing, a huge challenge just to keep up.
Well, to be honest, like I couldn't be a good pro since the summer, and that's part of the reason why, you know, the Lifetime series didn't go as well either, is because, you know, while my competitors are at altitude camp, I was riding for 2 hours at 6 a.m. before going to the hospital and meeting with the doctors all day. Like, I mean, my cycling was very much the second priority, and I would quickly go out for a couple hours when normally I would do 4 to 5 hours. I would do 1.5 or 2 and just do hard VO2 and sprints, just something to go as hard in a short amount of time as possible. We call that the dad ride when you're short on time.
The dad ride.
So, the dad ride. I got to get home for the kids. I'm going to do everything I can for 2 hours. And so, you know, I was a very shitty pro in terms of my training and preparation, but that was life. And you know, luckily, you know, being a privateer, all my sponsors understood, and they know that family comes first and that this is a hard personal thing I'm dealing with. And they supported me, knowing that, you know, once, you know, we got our family home and I have the winter to prepare correctly, that I can be the normal Peter next year. I was just able to kind of fake it because I have been a pro for so long, and I have so many miles. And, you know, like with Transcordilleras and all these races in the spring, I had so much base fitness that I could really kind of fake it for a long time.
Wow.
But I was faking it for so long that in October, I really started to feel the lack of preparation pretty good at the last few races, but that's okay.
Wow. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving for you guys.
It is, yep.
What's in store for Thanksgiving for Peter Stetina?
Oh man. Well, our son is not quite home, which would have been the ultimate thanks. But you know, I'm here in San Francisco as I talk to you right now, with the hospital visits, and my wife is in our normal home, which is 1.5 hours by car. So I have my bike here. I did a commute for training, so I rode down a few days ago, and I'm staying here and doing some rides in the morning. So tomorrow for the holiday, because it is, excuse me, such a big feast. You know, it's tradition for us cyclists to really do a really nice big ride in the morning, so we're hungry for the festivities. So I'm gonna visit my son in the morning until about 11, and then I'm gonna ride my bike all the way back home which is like a 4-hour training ride, 4 to 5 hours.
Cool.
So I'll arrive nice and hungry, and then we have a big feast with probably 25 friends. And
25 friends. Awesome.
Yeah, it's a potluck, which I don't know if you have that term in Macedonia, but a potluck is where you all bring something that some sort of dish to share, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So someone brings the turkey, someone brings the pie, someone the appetizers, and so I mean, like, this table of food is like, it's as big as a hotel room. It's crazy.
Nice. Well, to wrap it up, and I believe we are quite in time. Do you watch Vegan Cyclist sometimes? Do you follow his impossible routes?
I know the impossible routes. I see it on social media. To be honest, I do not have time to watch an entire impossible route. Those are long videos.
Yeah.
So, maybe one of these days during the winter when it's trainer time. But I'm friends with both Tyler, who is the vegan, and Jeremiah Bishop. They're both Canyon athletes, so I see them at races. Good dudes. And they look like they have some pretty good adventures.
No, the reason I'm asking is I believe tonight or tomorrow, actually, their last episode when they rode in Europe comes out. So maybe during the next few days you'll have a chance. But anyway, it just came up, and I thought you guys are kind of in that same world, and I thought of asking that.
Yeah.
Peter, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast. I believe we're on time. Again, I wish you. The
pleasure's all mine, man.
Thank you so much. I wish you all the best. 2023 priorities, your family first. I wish you all the best there, and then maybe your cycling can follow that nice positive energy. And I can't wait to see what's next from you.
How is the gravel in Macedonia? Are there any events coming up?
Oh my God! Thank you so much for asking. There isn't.
I want to explore the world with gravel. So there's every country and every region is a different style of rock and community. So I want to explore the world. So if there's something good in Macedonia, tell me.
Look, there's not too many races, but the routes that we have are really impossible. I forgot to tell vegan cyclists that, but if you ever get near here, when we see the gravel routes that you ride, me and my friends here always say, that's highway. That's a joke. That's not gravel. You should see gravels here. It's like full suspension, downhill mountain bikes. And we do ride them with gravel bikes. I have a specialized Diverge. I have a Cube, and there's quite a few cyclists that are kind of, keeping several bikes, and one is definitely gravel. Everything that we used to ride with our mountain bikes, we now try to do with our gravel bikes. And they're really gnarly, and I'm saying really gnarly. If you ever get to this part of the world, I'll find out and I'll invite you. It's not going to be a race, but I'll be a tour guide.
You guys are the country for underbiking is what we call it. When you have a bike, you should probably have more bike under you, but you get away with a little bit less.
Exactly.
So, yeah, underbiking. Right on.
Exactly. Okay, well, thanks so much, sir, and all the best.
Thanks for the chat. I enjoyed it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.